We've all seen that student, the one who's defiant, maybe disruptive, or just completely shut down. And our first instinct, right? It's to fix the behavior. But what if we're looking at the problem all wrong? What if what we see on the surface is just a symptom of something way, way deeper? I really want you to sit with this question for a minute. What if that behavior that looks like defiance isn't a challenge to our authority at all? What if it's actually a desperate act of self-protection? A shield that a student is putting up because their world just doesn't feel safe? Because underneath so much of that acting out, this is the thought that's playing on a loop in their head. I don't belong here, or I just don't feel safe enough to even try. And when that's your reality, when you feel like an outsider, well, learning is pretty much the last thing on your mind. Okay, so if we want to get to the real root of the problem, we need a whole new way of looking at it. The first big idea is this. We have to start seeing these behaviors as a signal, not some deliberate stance against us. This is so crucial. We're not dealing with a fundamentally bad kid here. More often than not, we're dealing with a kid whose nervous system has been shoved into fight, flight, or freeze. That behavior we see, it's just the alarm bell going off. So let's break this down, because this is where it gets really interesting. On the left, you see the labels we put on the behavior from the outside: defiance, disruption, avoidance, shutdown. But on the right, that's what's actually happening on the inside. What we call defiance is often just a kid feeling totally singled out. What looks like disruption can be a desperate cry from a student who feels completely invisible. And avoidance? Oh yeah, that's what happens when a student is terrified that making a mistake is a high-stakes, dangerous thing. And that student who just shuts down, they often feel like the whole world, and maybe even you, is against them. All right, so if the problem is a lack of safety, we need to really understand what safety is and how to build it. So that's what we're going to dig into next, the actual architecture of safety. This is how we build a new foundation for the classroom, for our teams, for anywhere. So at its core, psychological safety is this really simple but profound belief. It's the belief that you can show up, you can participate, you can be yourself, without being punished, humiliated, or kicked out. It's that feeling that lets a student raise their hand and ask a dumb question, or try a really hard problem and fail without fearing that they're going to be shamed for it. And let's be super clear about this. Psychological safety does not mean there are no expectations or no accountability, not at all. It's not about making everything easy and comfortable. Actually, it's the exact opposite. It's a thing that allows students to take on challenges. It basically means, even when I mess this up, I'm still valued here. My belonging is not on the line. And that leads us right to the other pillar, belonging. And I want you to notice that word, felt. Belonging isn't a poster on the wall or some slogan you repeat. No, it's a felt experience. It's a pattern of daily interactions that quietly tells a student, you matter here. This place is better because you are in it. And this isn't just a nice, fluffy idea. This is straight up neuroscience. When a student's brain picks up on a social threat, the stress response kicks in. And look what happens. The very tools they need for learning, their working memory, their impulse control, their ability to regulate emotions, they all just go offline. In that moment, they are biologically incapable of learning. And this slide just nails the core challenge, doesn't it? When a student is in that state, logic isn't going to work. Reasoning with them won't work. Yelling louder definitely won't work. The only way forward is to de-escalate that feeling of threat and bring back that sense of safety. So how do we actually do that? How do we make that shift from just trying to manage behavior to actually building connection? Well, it takes a pretty fundamental change in our approach. We have to move away from trying to control behavior and move towards fostering connection. The first step is just awareness. We have to recognize the common, often totally unintentional ways we might be chipping away at that safety. Things like calling a student out in front of everybody, which can be so humiliating, or using a sarcastic comment that we think is a joke, but to them, it just stings. Or, and this is a big one, treating their genuine confusion like they're just being lazy. That just makes them feel stupid and unwilling to ever ask for help again. And I love this quote because it just takes all the judgment out of the equation. This isn't about blaming anyone. We've all done these things. It just makes us human. But once we're aware of it, now we have the power to choose a different way. Okay, here is a perfect example of a tiny shift that has a huge impact. Instead of labeling the person, saying, you are disrespectful, which feels like a personal attack, we just name the action. That behavior doesn't match our expectation. See that? This simple change separates the student's identity from their mistake. It protects their dignity and it keeps the relationship intact. And hey, things are going to go wrong. They always will. We're human. The most powerful tool we have isn't perfection, it's repair. It's about modeling how to fix things. A quick private check-in where you just name what happened, you clarify the expectation, and, this is the most important part, you reaffirm that the connection is still strong. You're still on their team. That single act builds more safety than being perfect ever could. So, as we start to wrap up, let's bring this all together and think about one small but really powerful shift that you can make to put all of this into practice. I want to leave you with this question to really reflect on. Just think about your own classroom or your team or even your family. Where is that moment of uncertainty for people? That moment they might hesitate to try something because they're afraid of getting it wrong. And what is just one small thing you could do tomorrow to make that moment feel just a little bit safer? Because that right there, that's where the magic happens. Because in the end, it really all comes down to this. Sure, you can use roles to control behavior in the short term. Absolutely. But if you want students to learn how to self-regulate for the long haul, to really learn and thrive, you have to build a culture of belonging. You have to create a space where their nervous systems can finally relax enough to let the learning begin.